we have been collaborating on the Principal Health and Wellbeing study. Is that your main topic of research, or?
I wouldn't say anymore. My PhD was on school principal health and wellbeing. That was more so targeting Australian principals and the impact of education policy on their health and wellbeing and their passion, which is what we're currently working on. But I don't know. It was quite I wasn't targeted to get into peace building and so on, but I found myself into working and researching on developing an international peace framework with a number of partners, and that's been my whole year effectively, doing grant applications and setting up partners and hopefully building a framework and a metric and also a school program to identify specific needs and then to contextualize those needs with their education, targeting students that are disengaged. I'm assuming in Finland you may have something similar, but in Australia, and it's even between states different, we have, for example, in New South Wales, schools for specific purpose. Mm-hmm. So then certain students that have emotional disturbance or behaviour disorders and stuff are targeted and just go to these schools, which have far more teachers and resources towards that. But nationally, they have the lowest levels of school attendance and academic achievement and all these different things. Most of them are in the in out-of-home care, so the foster care system and so on. So I found myself working at developing a framework using that demographic as not only a way to psychometrically test this framework and everything, but also see whether using such a framework to contextualize their specific needs and interests with their education to see if they actually can improve their outcomes. The argument is, like, we have partners, a lot of different international partners that are predominantly focused on either peace building or humanitarian initiatives and so on. And historically, from an international perspective, the consistent two issues we argue is that there is a lack of an objective, reliable measure to measure impact of different interventions and so on. So the word peace and peace building is definitely taken advantage of because of that by governments and everything. Like, oh, this is a peace building initiative, where in reality it can be whatever you want.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So we're trying to develop an objective thing because from positive psychology, it looks at the individual components, and a very obvious example would be Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Everyone has to eat and drink and so on. And then positive peace, which is one of our partners they've developed. They've shown there are universal attributes from a national level to allow a nation to thrive and be more resilient. So we're trying to develop that middle ground, community-specific, objective, quantifiable measures, and that could be used as to measure impact, current levels within particular communities that are targeted, and that also would allow, when it comes to the school program, for the students to be able to not only identify by this metric, but then build a program to meet their specific needs and interests within the school environment to try and increase engagement at the same time as meeting their needs. And that is the goal. So we think that it's an international universal issue. And the one thing I've never needed to provide evidence for when I justify and discuss this project is the world's it's in a crisis. Like it's not great. Every other time in research, like, oh, you have to reference this. Like, I just have to say that, and no one has ever questioned that because it's just and that's also why we've had this project has ballooned so much, because I think people are scared.
That's the times that we are living now. Very interesting. So this is starting from the very ground level in the schools for special purposes. But it's going all the way through the education system, I guess.
Well, there has been a consistent call to, at least within, what's it called, the Education Reform Agreement or something, the National Education Agreement, where all states, territories and the federal government have agreed these are the core things that need to happen to improve our educational outcomes. And one of them is, it identifies that there's consensus that student well-being is a core factor to... Mm-hmm. Which it obviously does sound common sense, and it's there. But to this day, all of our goals, our processes, our strategies are all based on these performance metrics of typically academic, and standardized national averages compared to different countries, all these different things. There's not a single thing associated with well-being or needs, yet it's identified as being vital. And at the same time as well, they identify on a school-based level the first Stuart Riddle we spoke to, he spoke before, like the SES equivalent of the school community and their disadvantage or that and so on, but they don't identify anything above that. So they even identify, well, these are people disadvantaged, and they report that alongside all their academic results and everything. But yeah, it doesn't really make sense for reporting those. Yeah.
So when you have a poor measure, it would be better not to measure at all, I guess.
Yeah, it's not helping. It's just saying these people are disadvantaged. Like, well, we already know this.
Yes. And it's also distracting the actual question because it's just pointing towards this academic performance. Yeah.
So our argument is when we're developing this framework, we're intentionally getting these international partners. We've got ANGEL, which is the academic network of global education and learning. We've got GPAC, the global partnership for the prevention of armed conflict. We've got over 300 different affiliated organizations, and intending to get experts from everywhere to identify what a universal community need would be, regardless of demographic and so on. And then that would be at the metric. We're applying it within schools. First off, with these students that have been placed effectively, or within SSPs, or these schools that are dedicated to students with additional needs or behavioural or emotional disturbances. But we argue that, and the reason why we've got all these peace building and international people involved is this is a problem that's not just within it. This is a global, every single approach that we have taken. We're always targeting ideal performance, higher level metrics, but both with assessment, but also our design. And at the same time, we therefore place all of the prioritization of impressing the higher ups, be it the United Nations, be it the education department, those that are dictating what reflects what people need and so on, compared to actually considering the actual populations that you're targeting or involved. So
So the OECD PISA measurements are a prime example of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, the results just came out, and Finland has a dropping average for a few decades now. So there's a lot of discussion about that in Finland right now.
Exact same thing in Australia, and that is what prompted a significant investment in Australia in STEM funding, and that kind of is evidence that that's where we still value these. Well, that realistically doesn't really tell us much. Just say, we need to put money into STEM because we're declining. It's like, well, what are we going to do with this money? You literally just can't throw it.
Exactly. I would still like to ask a little bit about the principal health and wellbeing study. So how are you doing in Australia? We have collected now, I think, 4 rounds of data in Finland, but you have much longer perspective from the data set.
Within Australia, I believe, because that's now being managed by ACU, when I'm now part of Deakin, so I believe they are still doing the yearly the surveys, which will be ongoing. They started way back early 2010, so that's it's an excellent data set where we've surveyed over 60%, I think, of all school leaders in Australia at this point, at least during one time point over that period. So it has been very impactful, because the capacity to quantify, when you can go to a policymaker and go, this is literally more than half of the population consistently saying they're in crisis, they need to do this, A, B, and C, and it has resulted in I think like $50 million dedicated in 2018 for funding in New South Wales for mental health, and premiums being removed or reduced by insurance towards mental health, and all these different things. The sad part is that nothing really is still improving.
Yeah.
And I could still argue it goes back to the same point we were just talking about before, but I thought it was quite comical that we were asked seriously after presenting these findings, and then one of the state governments implemented, like, okay, well, they obviously need to have better support for mental health and so on. And then they get back to us and go, no one's taking up these supports we've now started to offer. And we look at it and it's like it goes on their record. It still baffles me why I'd need to explain. Why would you, like, do you not see how people may think that may impact their careers? Yes. And so it's, yeah. So I guess for making small progress, they're starting to go, oh, okay, there is a problem, but the way, instead of doing that consulting with the population and actually doing proper research to see what the best way forward, they automatically go, well, we're the head people, so we know what to do.
Yeah. So you talk about passion research with the principals.
Yeah.
So what are the findings?
It's depressing. Overall, passion, if you, based on the dualistic model, that theory, that once someone is passionate, they can either become obsessively passionate, where their whole life becomes dedicated towards this project, or they become harmoniously passionate, where they still are very passionate or involved with an activity or so on, but they understand and recognize balance between families, friends, and so on. And I probably wouldn't be surprised that obsessively passionate people tend to, they get burnt out, they start to destroy their relationships, and it's pretty horrendous. Whereas when you're harmonious, that's when it's considered a resource to support well-being and your work and so on. The very big issue in not only school principals, but any profession that caring, like in services industries, nursing, doctors, because you see as well, like the nurses, teachers, doctors, any aged care workers. That's a very big issue at the moment as well, at least in Australia. They're all suffering from burnout and all these different things. And the reason it appears is, at least I would theorize, a large proportion is their passion or their intrinsic motivations towards these professions, because they get that thrill in helping. And if there's even I read a paper, they've identified a genetic identifier of people, as it's far more prevalent with those working in such professions. The biggest problem with that then is that people are then more willing, because they are passionate and dedicated about their project, to continue to work in far poorer conditions, and that is where you end up burnt out and all these horrendous things we have been seeing for quite some time now in these professions. And the reason I say it seems to be, I think passion is a big thing with it. Internationally, the average person, like overall, about 12, I think it was like 11 to 13%. This was a few years back. I don't know what the current rates are, but between 11 and 13% would be considered passionate about their work. But based on our school principals, that rate is, I think, over 80% of our respondents. We're also doing surveys with early childhood educators, another sector in crisis. I think that was close to 90%. And it's just upsetting that, the reason, it seems as though the only reason these industries are still functioning to an extent is because people genuinely value and care about it, but that's causing other issues where you're forced to become obsessive, and people, because they have to work so much, it's as though it's a policy initiated obsession, a policy initiated it forces you to become obsessively passionate, because it makes it so your entire life has to be about the thing. So combine that with being passionate and being so, it's not good.
So the working conditions, if these people would have like average working conditions, they would thrive. They would be able to fulfill their passion and succeed in their work. But if you put them in a situation where the working conditions are really bad and they have very low pay and they have to work like very long hours, so then the passion turns against those persons themselves.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And when you look at it from outside of that field, if you think about teenagers thinking about what they want to do in the future and so on, so what they see in those fields is actually a kind of like, why are those people in those fields? They are not paid well enough. They are not allowed to do the work in the sense like with their own freedom and making decisions about their work and so on, but they are forced to do this reporting and all of that stuff that's all the time being added to their job. So what they see is a senseless job. They think that I'm never going to do anything like that. So even if they would have the passion for the field, but when they see how people are treated, so we are going to have less and less people applying to become nurses, applying to become teachers, applying to become early childhood educators.
Yeah, well,
because of that.
It's an international crisis. I think I'm not sure what it's like in Finland specifically.
It's the same,
but,
yeah, we are having the same issues. Not so bad yet. We still have great applicants, lots of great applicants for teacher training programs, but
Excellent.
Okay. Still less and less people applying than before.
It's a big issue in Australia. It was the government have created a new scheme where people who were engineers and everything, they've made it fast-tracked that you only have to spend like, I think, a placement or a few months doing something to then become a qualified teacher. But then, but then you think, well, I'm not even considering whether someone could legitimately then therefore go into that position and be qualified to do it with such that. But it doesn't address the fundamental issues with the working environment. It's just saying it's easier to become a teacher if you've done this. Well, that's not really changing anything, but possibly now making poorer quality teachers.
So my final question is, what is your message to Finnish teachers and principals?
I think it's possibly a difficult thing to do, but you have to try and be objective with your allocation and be very boring about your allocation of where you dedicate your efforts. Advice I'd previously given, because when different governments tried to implement different policies to support work-life balance, even like adding additional leave and everything, if you're obsessively passionate or very passionate about your work, even if you have the option to take a holiday, you're not going to take the holiday if you can see there is that work here. So either fundamental structural changes need to be made, but unfortunately you can't wait on that to happen, because this has been decades long problem. It's getting worse, but it's been there for a while. So unfortunately, because they are such vital and crucial roles, we want to make sure we do still have very high quality teachers and principals and everything like that. But they unfortunately are then burdened with having to be objective and stepping back and ensuring that they don't get to a state where their jobs consume them, and still ensure that they can recover and everything. It's a very challenging task. I don't even know if I can do it. I definitely get very I get difficulty with my work-life balance, but
we were just given the advice, do what sustains you. So would that be useful for teachers and principals also?
Yes, definitely. But make sure to appreciate your friends and family, because the first things that happen when you become more obsessive is those relationships sour, and then you start to lose your passion, and then you don't feel anything for your job, and then that's when you leave. But that's already after bridges are burnt and everything. You don't want to get to that point.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.